You think I'll be happy forever after cheating? But the truth is far from it. Have you ever wondered what happens when someone thinks they can easily lie and betray without facing consequences? Matty, the arrogant and self-centered woman, did something no one expected. But everything she wanted will be shattered in the next decisive moment. When revenge strikes, will Matty finally understand the value of the love she lost? Let's explore this story together. Before we continue, let me know what city you are watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. And what do you think of my new approach? Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe so I can send you interesting stories like this every day. I ignored his caution and went on a date. That ridiculous ego conflict cost me my future husband. My arrogance and pride have cost me dearly in this life. I'd always been warned about it, but I had no idea it would lose me my girlfriend and the opportunity to marry into a lifetime of happiness. This was all because I believed I was the superior person, but my fiancé had taught me a significant lesson. Pride definitely does come before a fall, and my fall was epic lol. I always felt I was on top of the world. You know, the beginning of every phrase, being the only girl who my parents spoiled beyond belief. I expected everyone else to do the same. I grew up with everyone at my beck and call. Do not blame me for it, guys. Anyway, that influenced how I grew up and perceived the world. I was feeling hot inside. Who wouldn't want to do what I said? Nobody and no one could tell me what I should do. That's what I told my fiancé after he warned me not to go on the date, but I had not heard. He wouldn't have known if it hadn't been for my tattoo or mouth, as well as the individuals around me who stole what was mine. I found him to be simp and wanted him to understand that even though we were already engaged, I could do anything I wanted and flirt with anybody I wanted. I wanted him to know that marriage couldn't stop me. My fiancé turned out to be anything but a simp. I was a clown for thinking that, and I had suffered the effects of my ego trip severely, and I had learned my lesson when my fiancé exacted his retribution in the most terrible and unexpected ways. What he did will surprise you as it did me, and while it didn't get to me again, it was a stab in the back. I suppose the entire situation should not have surprised me. I should have seen it coming when we started having troubles, problems that were entirely the result of my selfish attitude, but I hadn't seen them coming. Let's start with the beginning of my slide. My name is Matty, and I am 27 years old. My fiancé's name is Walter, and he is 28 years old. I believe Walter and I had been pals since high school. My connection with Walter was typical of romantic romances in which the nerd gets the girl. But in my situation, the girl fumbles the nerd who turns out to be incredibly wealthy. I kid you not, LOL. Walter had a crush on me since high school, but he couldn't tell me because he was in the quiet and shy group, whereas I was the popular hot girl. I was an attention-seeking witch with an asterisk. I know who I am and was. I would not hide from it. So Walter had a tiny crush on me and kept it a secret throughout high school before confessing to me at a bonfire night hosted by my sorority. That night's celebration had been a fiasco, and the events leading up to my fiancé revealing his affections to me were memorable. And sure, we attended the same college, the University of Cincinnati in Ohio. I had gotten intoxicated and was throwing it down for this random college guy, and before I knew it, I was out of the crowd and away from the music. My fiancé, who was not a partygoer, had come to rescue me from the crowd. Wasn't that sweet? He gave me a glass of water and then stated that he didn't appreciate me hanging around with the partygoers. At that time, I believe he thought he had power over me. He was a year older than me, so he was well-versed in college do's and don'ts and was eager to offer me advice. Well, I found him cute, and then he told me he had a crush on me and wanted to take me out on a date. I was inebriated, so I answered sure and giggled. That is what I do when I have even a small amount of booze in me. I always remember everything. So the next day I went on a date with my fiancé. It was cute, but we didn't make it official at the time. We were just great buddies, and he was a big help. We did not start dating until 2 years ago, after I finished college. He graduated a year before me and started working for a corporation. We dated for a year, and I got to know his family. I wouldn't call them impoverished, but they weren't middle class. That boundary between the impoverished and middle classes? Yes. I hadn't expected that. I had assumed that he was wealthy or at least well off. Anyway, I didn't give it any notice. We were only dating at the time, after all. There was no push, and he had a plan. He had told me that he had a strategy to make money, but even while we were dating, he took care of and supplied for me. He must have liked me, but I had been too self-centered to notice. We dated for a year, and on our one-year anniversary, I returned to our shared apartment and opened the door for my engagement party. To be honest, I was a little upset because the objective had been to get affluent first before considering our next step, which was marriage. Wasn't it a fair reason to be outraged that he had just made a proposal to me while all of my friends, who I was better off than, were screaming, "Say yes, yes." I could not say no. Despite my anger, I would not have said no. Thanks for making it this far. Now, please take a moment to share your thoughts on what we have presented. Your opinion is important to us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. You can pause the video for 5 seconds to give your feedback. First and foremost, since I was the first person in my friend group to propose marriage, and I adored my fiancé, yes, I did. He was thoughtful, polite, and took good care of me. But then I let my ego stand in the way of a positive outcome. So I said yes, and we started arranging our wedding. That is how Walter became my fiancé. Then I'll explain how I botched everything and lost the person I was intended to spend my life with. I had no idea he'd become wealthy or that he was already wealthy and learning from his father. My husband never talked much about his parents. He simply informed me that they were still alive and did not want anything to do with him. If I had known he was in line for an inheritance, I would have stayed and lowered my ego a little. Yes, I was a gold digger, and all the other names you call a woman who wants a man's money. I wasn't going to stay in a marriage where I wasn't fully provided for. But if I had realized my fiancé had the potential to become as wealthy as I had always imagined, I would not have gone on that date or done anything I did. I would have been more wary of my relative attempting to take my seat. That sly minx, I knew she was up to no good. Tell them about it. I'd want to assist you arrange your wedding. It is your own people that are out to ruin you. Anyway, I was a materialist, and so did my spouse be. No, I was a materialist. He knew I enjoyed being taken care of. This included gifts, unplanned getaways, spontaneous date evenings, and weekend shopping excursions. Did my hubby happen to know? I was plainly proud, despite his repeated warnings. I recall one instance when we were dating and went to one of my friend's birthday celebrations together. The occasion was for close friends. I was the only one carrying a Birkin bag worth around $2,000, and I never stayed in one location. Everyone wanted to see my bag, and my fiancé boyfriend at the time had persuaded me that if I was prancing around, everyone would notice how much better off I was. He was completely correct, so I could say he knew I was a proud person. I never took no for an answer from him, and I informed him that he had a catch. So if I didn't look well, I could be kidnapped and forced to appear good. I had simply meant the comment as a jest. However, I never imagined it would become my reality. Anyway, our troubles began when things grew difficult, and he wasn't forthright about providing for me, as well as the fact that we were getting married. I told him right away that getting engaged while he wasn't rooted was a horrible idea. But he did not listen, and some of you would believe I was only thinking about myself. But I wasn't. I genuinely had a plan for my future with my fiancé. I just wanted him to get rich first, or at least be able to provide for me without breaking the bank. I was not working, and he was fine with it. However, my concerns began to show, despite the fact that I desired a large wedding, and my fiancé appeared to be capable of providing it. But along the road, it was discovered that he couldn't. Was I wrong to be angry over that? I was not. I was not wrong to want what I wanted. I wasn't incorrect in pursuing it either. My fiancé began having some snags at work as the bills for the wedding we had been planned began to accumulate. It was so unexpected, yet I had noticed it along the road. He returned home one day and stated that he was under intense scrutiny at work, but there was some mistake with the funds he received for a company buy and blah, 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 with every loophole pointing back to him. However, he had not taken any money from the company, but I wasn't listening to any of that. What caught my attention was when this man suggested that we postpone the wedding. Can you imagine it? LOL. After being the first to become engaged among my friends and boasting that my wedding would be the one they would remember for generations, he told me we would have to postpone. I told him straight out that I had no idea where he was going to acquire the money, but we were going through with the wedding as planned. No one was going to bring down my status in front of my pals in the coming weeks. My fiancé refused to go to work and instead stayed at home, surfing the internet on his laptop and snacking on chips all day. It got on my nerves, so I decided to approach him about it. We had bills to pay. We had to pay for the space, my dress fittings, the cake, food, and decorations. And he was just being casual about things and lounging around the home. That's when I discovered out he'd been suspended from work. That was the worst news of my life at the time. I had no idea I was in for a show back then. LOL. My spouse had been suspended from work. That was obviously a major setback to the wedding plans because who was going to pay for everything? Definitely not me. He promised me that he would obtain a job soon, but I must admit that I did not regard him in the same way afterward. I was better placed than him in my perspective because only one call to my father was planned for my wedding, but I did not want to rely on him. This was why I wanted my husband to be financially secure before we married, to avoid situations like this in my head. I canceled the wedding plans because I couldn't marry a man who could lose his job. I lost all respect for my fiancé. I informed him that if he did not want to lose me, he needed to obtain a job, and that had resulted in a major disagreement between us that day. About 2 weeks later, my fiancé started leaving the house again, claiming that he had been vindicated. They discovered that he was not the one siphoning the money. Well, if he had siphoned the money, we would have been 100 times wealthy and could have fled to the Maldives. However, my boyfriend was the goody two-shoes at his office. He stated we could resume wedding planning because he had received a work bonus to compensate for his suspension. He was overjoyed, and I was relieved that he had finally gotten his work back. But I had already done something wrong, and I had no idea what to do. I was wondering what I had done. I began accepting friend requests from men who were unaware I was soon to marry. It had begun with a simple reopening of my Tinder account. I just wanted to see what was going on there. And while scrolling through the hot guys' profiles, I unintentionally swiped right on one. We started talking when I accidentally laughed out loud. It was just casual flirtation, conversation, and getting to know one another. I knew I was about to get married. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but did I come to a stop? No, my betrothed had not truly claimed me in front of my family, friends, and the large throng at my ideal wedding. So I was still a free woman. There wasn't an official ring on it. And what's the harm in a little online flirting? It wasn't like I was ever going to go on a date with the men on Tinder. I really wanted to feel gorgeous and confident about myself. There's this power that we women feel when a lot of guys find us sexy and desirable. And let's not get started on the attention. So that's what it was meant to be. While my fiancé went to work and labored, I received attention from various men online who couldn't stop praising me and boosting my ego. I had no idea my demise would be monumental or that I was damaging myself for the good things that were supposed to come my way. My fiancé's money had run out, and I had only recently made a down payment on the wedding hall and paid for phase 1 of my wedding dress fittings. This sparked another argument, and my fiancé had the arrogance to propose that I obtain a job. Could you think he wanted me to obtain a job? And why was it necessary for me to foot the wedding bill or to start taking care of myself after marrying him? I was furious at that statement, and I reminded him that he was the one who dropped down on one knee and asked me to marry him, not the other way around, for him to have done so. It meant he was prepared to accept me as a responsibility and provide and care for me. I informed him that my father could still care for me despite his advanced age. I had been childish with my words. Trust me, I had no idea the consequences of what I was saying back then. Anyway, that appeared to irritate him even more because he assumed I was also in on the marriage, which I was. Do not get me wrong, however, as I previously stated, I was not going to marry someone who would not provide for me. Imagine telling me that I needed to obtain a job after being pampered my entire life. We really appreciate you liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Your support is a great inspiration and encouragement for us. Thank you so much. What am I going to do there? Actual work? No thanks. He was furious and I was as enraged. As a result, our wedding plans were once again put on hold. I should have noticed the indications from here. You needed to be blind. Not too, but I suppose it was. My fiance was too, because who would have put up with my toxic baggage up until now? My fiance was gone for nearly a week, and I made another stupid mistake. One of the men I had been chatting with on Tinder offered me a date, and I accepted. I was upset and angry, and all I wanted was to feel better about myself. My fiance stopped doing that. He used to take me out on dates and go shopping with me, and he just showed me how much he cared about me in his own unique way. I hadn't felt like that in a while, so I went looking for it. I didn't anticipate my Tinder date to be as hot as fire. I saw his images and assumed they had been slightly altered to resemble a Greek god. I didn't expect the man I'd see on the date to look exactly like his images. He was hot and I was engaged, but he had no idea how much I liked our date, so he requested to see me again. I went on another date with him while I was supposed to be arranging my wedding. I was aware of what I was doing, but I had no idea what the consequences might be. My fiancé refused to care about me, therefore I wasn't going to give him a second thought. This was what I was thinking. After all, I was young and could attract any guy I wanted. If he didn't come clean, he was going to lose me. I didn't desire it, but my ego served as my spokesperson, speaking in place of reasoning in matters of the heart. Obviously, my fiancé had no idea I was going on dates behind his back at first. He wasn't meant to know, so maybe I could have gotten away with it. I wouldn't have been humiliated, and I'd be enjoying my dream life as his wife. However, that approach did not work for me. Funny enough, I always assumed that things would always go my way. That was the mindset I had as I grew up. I received anything I desired. Things had always gone smoothly for me. Men fell at my feet. People went out of their way to help me simply because they wanted to be on my side. So I went on the date since my fiancé did not want to contribute to my life. Call me a gold digger, but most of you are doing the same thing. My fiancé returned home after a week and apologized like he should. He apologized for making me feel like I needed to provide for the wedding, and I forgave him. Of course, I even stopped going on dates for a short time as a sign of good faith, and our wedding plans resumed. However, the financial aspect of giving remained a major challenge. Then my cousin had to get involved, she done. Miss Goody Two-Shoes pretended to want to help me, but she was a serpent and a far worse gold digger than I was. It was as if she was sent from the depths of hell to wreck my existence, and that is exactly what she did. My cousin asked if she could move in with me. In truth, she didn't ask. She suddenly showed up at my house one day and said she was come to help me organize the wedding. She stated she wanted to help me because she knew I didn't have any relatives or sisters to support me. So she chose to help Lowell, as if I implored her to come to my rescue. I couldn't turn her away because she was right on my doorstep. Allow her to see how hard I worked to acquire money from my fiancé so that I could have my dream wedding. I had no issues about her seeing me at my lowest since she wasn't seeing me. It was my fiancé. My pride remained intact. I wasn't the only one without money because, despite my fiancé's decision to stop contributing for my maintenance and upkeep, I had my own means. My fiancé was having difficulty making ends meet, and it served him well to plan a wedding when he wasn't yet financially secure. I was even having second thoughts about it. To make matters worse, my cousin needed to be supportive. I recall one incident when we were dining together and discussed the important issues we needed to resolve with wedding planning. I informed my fiancé that we needed to finish paying for the wedding site because the down payment was no longer sufficient to secure the location. Instead of supporting me, my cousin encouraged my fiancé and suggested we find a smaller venue. Would you believe it? She wanted to tell me what to do at my own wedding. I should have noticed it earlier. I should have noticed how her gaze never left my fiancé and how she was constantly coddling him. I should have known she was watching and wanted to get her claws on my man. If I had acted on it, I would not have lost my fiancé to her. Yes, I lost my fiancé to my two stealing cousins. That was my fault, I agree. But he was mine. Wasn't she supposed to steer clear? No, she was coming for what was mine. I simply choose not to think that my fiancé could be taken away from me. My cousin began assisting Dad with items for my wedding, but I began to wonder why I had allowed her into my home. It got to the point where I had to tell her to stop acting because I was concerned about my wedding. It was my dream wedding, and I would get anything I desired. She should also avoid discussing topics such as cost reduction. If she wanted to talk shit like that, she could go to get married. What I had told her that day created a schism between us, and she ceased commenting while my fiancé and I were making preparations. She simply assisted me with errands and accompanied me to my dress fittings. I believe my remarks had driven her away, but she stayed and wanted to help arrange my wedding, unaware that she was trying to cover for my fiancé behind my back. I learned the hard way. If there was one thing I hadn't realized, it was that my future spouse had a big ego of his own, and that led to our final combat, which ended our engagement. My life changed for the worse. For a while, I stopped going on dates because I assumed he was serious about me again. He provided me money to plan my wedding the way I wanted and did not grumble about it. He would buy me a small keepsake when he returned from work and ask if I needed anything. I was content, but karma or whatever must have been unkind. Perhaps my varied choices contributed to my collapse. I would never acknowledge it. But then my fiancé became distant. I believe this was the point at which my cousin began approaching him and providing emotional support as I dealt with his headache. It really is your own people, LOL. My fiancé had become aloof and disconnected, and I didn't interpret it as anything. I didn't realize it until everything had gone wrong, because while my boyfriend was being told he deserved more than my two-timing cousin, I had relapsed into my old bad behavior. I ran into the handsome guy I had a date with at the mall. I mentioned him at the beginning, so I ran into him and was instantly reminded of how attractive he was and what I was missing. He inquired about me, said he had missed seeing me, and paid for my entire purchase on the spot. Could you believe I wasn't going to reject him? I let him take me to a restaurant and fed me. Then it started again. I knew what I had done was wrong, but I was not legally married to my fiancé. He had asked me to marry him, but I had not answered yes in front of God as a high church official, so there wasn't supposed to be any problem. I went on dates with Mr. Hot Guy behind my fiancé's back and got things in exchange, and he didn't even ask for sex. That's what made it so surreal. He wasn't pressing me for sex, but he wanted me to have all I could possibly want. Of course, I wouldn't give up such a fantastic item. My fiancé be damned, Lowell. The ramifications of the remark I made to myself. It was quick. My fiancé didn't know I went on dates, and to be honest, I didn't care whether he knew, but he found out. My cousin had a ragged mouth. I was on a shopping trip with my affair when we came upon my cousin at a clothing store. There was no other way to explain the situation than that I was cheating because my affair had his hand around my waist and was hugging me close to him. This was how I ran into my cousin. Fortunately, she said nothing in front of the guy I was with. Fortunately, she only shook her head and walked away twice. If there was anything like that, she didn't notify my husband on the first day. Please comment number 1 so that I can know that you liked the video and subscribe to our channel. Your support is a great inspiration and encouragement for us. Thank you very much. I believe she wanted to confirm whether it was real, and I didn't try to be bashful and hide the fact that I was having an affair with another guy to whom I wasn't engaged. We ran into her again, and this time she turned on me to my fiancé. This coincided with my fiancé's office party, which allowed employees to invite their significant others. My fiancé had told me about the party, and my affair had mentioned that he intended to accompany me to an event. I had no idea there was drama about to emerge, so my cousin informed my girlfriend, who was furious. He screamed at me that despite everything he had done for me, I was prancing around as if I didn't have a ring on my finger or was already dating someone. I was openly flirting and taking presents from men when I was about to get married. Apparently, he had noticed all of the things I had been bringing home, but had decided to ignore because he assumed they were from my father. This is when I realized my girlfriend had a big ego. He started outlining all the things I'd done that he'd chosen to ignore, but only because he loved me and believed we were meant to be. So he'd overlooked a lot, and I was supposed to apologize to him for taking him for granted. And one thing I wasn't paying attention to was my own ego, which had flared up and reared its ugly head. I told him he should consider himself lucky that he was able to put a ring on my finger when I was still clearly a catch. Apologize? Can you imagine if I should have apologized to him? For what? I didn't push him to get down on his knees and ask for my hand in marriage. We exchanged such passionate words that my cousin had to withdraw herself from the harshness of the situation. Then I informed my fiancé that I would not be attending his workers' party with him because I was on another date with someone who did not make fun of me and thought I was worthy. That appeared to enrage and more, and he warned me that I should not even consider it. My girlfriend made it obvious that if I left on the date I was talking about, it was the end of our relationship. How could I have assumed that was a joke when he told me? I assumed he was joking about his statements and merely repeating them in anger. And I left. I left on a date with Mr. Hot Guy, and you would not believe the drama. I imagined myself on the date Mr. Hot Guy had asked me to accompany him to. It turned out to be my fiancé's workers' party, the exact same. Imagine my amazement when the car pulled up to my fiancé's office building and Mr. Hot Guy escorted me inside. The first person my gaze fell on was my fiancé, and I thanked my fortunate stars that no one at his company knew who I was, and I prayed my fiancé wouldn't raise a commotion. But dumb luck. He did not create a spectacle in front of everyone. He had just approached my date and told him I was engaged to be married. My date quickly dropped my hand as if I had got a virus and proceeded to quarrel with my husband. I'd stepped in close to hear what they were arguing about because, in some sick, twisted way, I hoped they were arguing about me. I assumed that everything revolved around me. They had not been arguing about me, however. Apparently, Mr. Hot Guy was the one who accused my fiancé of embezzling monies. He was the one who had caused my fiancé to lose his job the first time. How hilarious was fate? It was very funny. All right, anyway, I went home that night before the party ended and waited for my future husband to come home so I could beg his forgiveness. He arrived home while I was already sleeping, so I had to visit him the next morning. My cousin had already left the home. At least she had the foresight and decency to do so. So the next morning, I dropped down on my knees and begged my fiancé for forgiveness, explaining that I had no idea what had happened and that I would be the perfect wife and would never longer go on dates. My fiancé said nothing and did not toss me out of the house. I had believed fate was amusing. My fiancé had a sense of humor that would make you laugh out loud. He wrecked me in front of all of my pals. I had foolishly continued with the wedding plan since I assumed that it was back on track because he hadn't pursued me out of the house or anything. I didn't realize I was a big joke. 2 months passed. The day of our wedding arrived. I had even used my money to help my father plan the entire thing. And my husband had sat back for 2 months preparing to exact his retribution. I had finished my makeup and hair, put on my dress, and was waiting for the planner to call to inform me that the wedding ceremony had began so that I could march in with my father. I waited and waited, and when it looked like no one was going to call me out, I had seen myself in the church, and you would not believe what I witnessed. My fiancé was kissing my cousin on the altar during my fantasy wedding, which I had funded with my money. He had married my cousin and dumped me at the altar as retaliation for disobeying his warning and going on a date with his rival at work, whom I had not realized was his rival. My companions began to laugh at my discomfort. I was standing in a bridal gown while my fiancé married another woman in front of me. Is there anything worse than that? The weeks following the wedding flew by, and I went to my fiancé's house to demand an explanation, only to find my clothing and luggage outside with a message telling me to relocate them or risk losing them. I had to move my belongings back to my father's place. However, a month later, my father was arrested because he owed a large bank loan, and all of his property, including our house, was seized. They were about to charge him in court, and I didn't know what to do, so I had to go and beg whoever had given him the loan to give us more time to pay it back. My ex-fiancé was found to be responsible for the debt issue. Apparently, my ex-fiancé was the son of one of the bank's board directors. He was the son of the primary decision-maker at the bank. And now he's taken over my fiancé. He did not show me any mercy with the loan, so I had to use my personal funds to bail out my father and pay half of the loan. This was how my life ended up paying off my father's debt because my ego was too huge, and I pushed away something that was meant to work out well in my life. I was meant to be enjoying the luxuries of my ex-fiancé's wealth, but instead my cousin had taken my place, all due of my arrogance and foolish decision. I hope you, who are proud like me, would learn from my experience and not repeat the mistakes I made in my life. I'm still paying off the loan, and my ex-fiancé didn't even pretend we had a connection in the past. I begged my cousin to intervene on my behalf, but she did not help. She probably thought I deserved it. And I did. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you want to receive more useful information and continue this journey with me, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'm always eager to receive your ideas and feedback to improve and bring even better videos. Let's grow and share knowledge together. See you in the next video.